Good evening, everyone. I now call to order the regular monthly meeting of the Burlington Electric Commission held on the second Wednesday of the month at 5 p.m. here at 585 Pine Street in Burlington. Today is June 10th, and the time is 5:09. All right. And let the record show that the full commission board is here and a quorum is present. Okay. Approval of the agenda. Commissioners, you've received the agenda for today's meeting. Any proposed amendments? Okay. If there are no objections, the agenda will be adopted as presented. Okay. Next, approval of minutes. You received the minutes in your board packet. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
I had a question on one of them.
Yeah.
Find it. It was in the public comment section. It was the line didn't make a lot of sense to me. It was in a response to Pike Porter or Pike Porter's comments, and I can't. I'm trying to find it. Sorry.
It's all right.
It wasn't clear to me what it was saying.
Let's give you a moment to see if you can find where you were.
I have the note here.
You have the minutes? There it is, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so what I read was, yeah, Pike Porter acknowledged Commissioner Bond's recent independence. I didn't is independence the right word there? I didn't know what that was about.
It's a good point.
It looks like maybe a spell check or something.
Yeah, I would move that we change that to resolution, because I think that's what
That's
Mr. Porter said.
Okay, good, because yeah, that makes more sense.
Just reading into it. Yep, yeah, that was what he was commenting on. Okay, great. Is there, do we have a vote on the change to the minutes?
I'd move to accept with amendments.
Great.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? There's none. And the motion passes. Great. Okay. The public comment period. I will now hold the public comment period. We will open the floor for anybody who wants to come and speak. Each speaker is asked to state their name and keep their comments to 5 minutes. Do we have anybody from the member of public who would like to speak today? Katie didn't have anyone.
There's nobody online.
Okay.
Is there anyone in the room?
Okay. That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, I think we don't have anyone right now from the public to speak. Okay. Moving on to the monthly impact minute.
So we have Don Toby, one of our foresters, who's joined by Noel Dodge. And Don, do you want to do a quick intro? And
Yeah. Sit down.
if you want to, yeah, you both come right up.
So yes, I'm Don Toby. I'm one of the foresters at McNeil. Have been for 33 years. And I'm here to introduce Noel Dodge, who's one of our state wildlife biologists. And in particular, he is the Private Land and Habitat Program Manager. So as you folks may know, that before we can buy any wood chips in Vermont, we have to get all of the logging jobs approved and notified before that can happen. And what we do is we submit a harvest notification to Fish and Wildlife, and there's 7 biologists that have different zones, I think. So like Noel, he does Lamoille County and Washington County. And so if one of our jobs is in Cambridge, let's say, one I just did, it goes to Noel. And again, we're looking for deer wintering areas, wetlands, rare threatened and endangered species, critical wildlife habitat, and so all of those are put on a map. We at BED we make a harvest map that has the harvest areas overlaid with these deer wintering areas, wetlands, RT&Es, and then we do a some paperwork that has the job location, the landowner, who the harvester is, and a site description, and then prescriptions for each of the areas being cut. And that's really generalized, but I'd like to get Noel going here. So Noel's going to talk to us about the last 10 years worth of data that we have submitted to them. And he's going to let us know things like how many acres had changes and or mitigation and things such as that. So.
And I have lots of pretty pictures, so hopefully this all works. Let's see if I can present. Okay, we need the other screen. That one. Oh, did it work and I stopped too quick? Yep. Sorry. Technology.
We're doing it.
Oh, now I can't see it. Here we go. All right. Let me give that a second so you can see it full size. All right, great. Well, thanks for the intro, Don. So as Don described, the information gets checked and then I enter it into a database. All of our staff enter it into a database. And so I built this database in 2016, so we've got a nice 10. It's actually 11 year this year, but the fiscal year isn't over, so we don't have 2016 done yet. So that's mostly what I'm sharing. This is going to be just some basic numbers and some nice graphs about where harvests are happening and what the result of them is. Before I start that, I just want to stress that this partnership has really been fruitful since the 80s. We've done a lot of great work in collaboration with the procurement foresters at BED and Rygate as well. A lot of habitat work gets done because there is a low-grade market for some of this wood that BED provides. So that's important to keep in context. So broadly across the state, this is our survey, our staff map. So this is how our staff is broken up by coverage area. The average response time, so you may be aware in the Certificate of Public Good, an MOU requires 15 days for a response from the Department of Fish and Wildlife. I ran the numbers, and in over 10 years, 6 days is our average response. It varies depending on the project and workload. This is just one portion of the work that most of these biologists do for the department. And most importantly, I think, and as a testament to the hard work of Don and the other procurement foresters, 75% of these notifications don't have any resource concerns for the department. So they're pretty straightforward to get back to and respond. That doesn't include the self-certified projects because we don't look at those. They're self-certified by the BED foresters.
Could I explain that?
Sure.
So,
Hit next and didn't do
a lot of land holdings in Vermont are in the current use program. So they've got a consulting forester and they already have a state-approved forest management plan. One thing, use value does not stress wildlife issues like we do. So oftentimes we'll take the plan, and if there are some potential, like if deer yards aren't addressed in that plan and it has some, then we still have to send it in and work something out with the biologist. But if there's no issues with rare, threatened, and endangered wetlands, deer yards, then we can self-approve it. So that's what that was.
Yep. So getting just to the sort of workload for the department, this is just a bar graph of the last 10 years of the number of notifications that the department received just from Burlington Electric. You can see it varies a little bit. We average about 115 reviews a year just for Burlington Electric, and that over 10 years is over 1,000 notifications reviewed. We average about 2,700 acres, a little more, 2,800 probably. That's the average over the last 10 years. And so we're looking at approximately 8,900 acres a year That doesn't mean that there's resource issues on each one, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there's actual harvest happening on each one of those acres. But that's how many acres are notified in the process. So here's the real nitty gritty, and this is a little difficult to read, but just to give you the 10,000-foot view, this is every year we account for the acres impacted and acres protected for each of our habitat groups. So that's what makes up the bar graph that's on here. So if you start on the left in 2016, your acres impacted is the left bar, and your acres protected is the right bar. So the real take home here is that every single year in this 10-year period, this process protects many, many more acres of wildlife habitat than are impacted in the process. So it's really a valuable partnership and system. So we got some totals on the other side. Again, 2,700 acres a year. That total over 10 years is 89,665 acres. That's acres of forest reviewed in this process. Within that 89,000, 23,000 total acres of resource actually were projects where acres had either a resource concern. Basically, that's all it is. Is it impacted or protected? One of those two. There was deer weed there, or there was RTE species. And of that subset, that 23,000, only 12% of those actually have impacts. So we're talking about 2,800 acres of species impact out of 89,000 reviewed over 10 years. So it's really a positive thing. It allows a lot of these harvest operations to be a little more profitable and make a little bit of money on some of the wood that needs to come out that wouldn't necessarily be timber. So it's a positive, really, in the long run. So here's some fun maps. You can't read the numbers, but I put them in there for my own reference. On the far left, this is the total projects reviewed. So again, that's that number of projects reviewed, and this is by town. So you can see there's actually a blue star where the McNeil plant is. And then you can see sort of the area of influence where wood is coming from, where projects are being reviewed on the left. The center map is the total acres reviewed. So that's that 86,000 that I mentioned before. And I've got the little tables on the bottom of the high towns. Elmore had a little over 3,000 acres of project reviewed. It was a couple of really fairly large timber harvest projects. Doesn't mean all that wood came to Burlington Electric, but it was a big area to review, and there was actually a lot of protection for bats, particularly in that review. And then all the way on the right is the acres protected, just sort of in a graphical sense. The darker the red, the more protected acres there were. So you can see it's all over the place. It really depends on the notification and the work that the VED foresters put in to get us a notification that makes sense. So.
Do the, that right map of total acres protected, does that become part of a larger system of maps that you have of land that may be permanently that you can't? Like,
good question.
Now you know we can't do things here because there's critters or whatever that occupy that space, and
that's a great question.
Is that in perpetuity?
No, and it's a good opportunity to make that example. So the way we categorize protected as is positively influenced. So if we amend one of these notifications to avoid the bat season, so the harvest still happens, but it has to happen at a certain time of year to not impact the bats, we count that acreage as protected. So we've had a positive influence on that species. The same goes for deer wintering area. If we alter the prescription to maintain more cover in a deer wintering area but allow some patch cuts elsewhere to cause some regeneration, that's protected. So it isn't protected in the sense of like conservation or permanent easement or something. Right. It's protected in the process. We had a positive influence on that habitat.
Yeah.
That's a great question, so thanks for pointing that out. There is a map of all the protected lands as well, but I don't manage that one. A&R does. We have most of the same layers that I'm using to review this are available publicly as well too. So. And then here I just threw this one in at the end. You can't really read it well, but I highlighted the two categories that I also track are agricultural conversion and development. So some of these notifications are for, say, a housing development. They need to clear some trees, and they're going to send the chips to Burlington Electric. This is just a 10-year summary. As you might expect, Addison, this is by county. Addison County was the #1 for acres of agricultural conversion that sent biomass chips to the plant. There's a lot of ag in Addison County, so that totally makes sense. #2 is Franklin County, or #2, I'm sorry, is Orleans, and then Franklin, so that makes sense. And then the bottom of the graph is the developed acres, so this is house sites and other development projects that happen, typically go through a different permitting process like Act 250 or 248, and that would is then approved in that process and then is notified and can be sent to the Burlington Electric plant. So again, development, Chittenden County, number one, 173 acres of development clearing was sent, the wood was sent to Burlington Electric in the last 10 years. So really over a 10-year period, it's not a huge amount. But I just thought that might be interesting to add in. And then final slide, from yard trees to extensive forestry operations, that's my house on the left. I sent one single tandem load of gnarly pine trees to Burlington Electric. I can't remember what year that was, but it was a while back.
4 years ago.
Yeah, it was a while
Yeah.
back, yep. So yeah, the take home here is it's a positive process. We really are actually protecting quite a bit of habitat and supporting the forest products industry and landowners who need to get habitat work done. A lot of times habitat work is not taking those really nice valuable trees, it's taking all the stuff that, you know, could be firewood or worse, and this is a great avenue for that, so. And that's all I had, unless you have more questions, as the screen says.
Okay, quick one.
Yeah.
A couple slides back, you talked about acres impacted.
Yeah.
What is the definition of impacted?
So as I said with the question on the protected, that's positively influenced, so it's negatively influenced. So it's you know, once in a while we'll get a deer wintering area that's mapped, but the foresters will work with us to say, you know, there's no softwood regeneration, it's all hardwoods. It's not going to be functional wintering area, or it isn't now, and so this harvest goes forward. So that would be impacted, it would be technically lost for that specific habitat type.
Got it.
Yep.
Cool, thank you.
I have a question. I'm trying to understand, so I think often the biomass is a byproduct or a less valuable
Yep.
timber product. So I would assume that there's potentially previously already been a request for the general harvest that's not the lower quality wood from a major harvest, and then this is like a follow-up on, like, hey, we're gonna get also the chips for McNeil. Am I understanding that correctly? Or how do these tie together?
Sure. I mean, Don could
Yeah.
probably answer that, yeah.
Yeah, so the whole process usually starts out as a landowner or a consulting forester or even a logger calling one of us and saying, I got this big job coming up and we're gonna harvest 100 acres or whatever it is. And, you know, we're going to do a thinning, we're gonna take out some saw timber and then some cull trees. Basically, chip harvesting couldn't really happen without the other happening first, because it's not profitable. So the loggers, they'll take the higher value products out first. And on a good job, you'll see piles of saw logs and piles of pulpwood and piles of firewood, and then the tops, which are gonna be chipped. So it's really just a byproduct of doing the rest of the harvest. Occasionally, if somebody's doing, say, a wildlife cut, a bird cut, let's say, and the forest isn't very mature, but it's the right species to cut early to provide browse and feed for the specific wildlife that they're managing for, they will just go in and you know, clear cut 5 acres, let's say. And they might take a little bit else out, but the bulk of that is going to be chips.
So, and I understand that, but wouldn't they apply also to you, the bigger logger job, and then the biomass would be a follow-on application, because it's sort of a secondary request to it?
Sure, the biomass is
Yeah.
only through this chip harvest notification, so I'm not reviewing all timber harvests in the state. Only if they have some
you're
component
only-
they wanna sell chips
Okay.
to
Yeah.
Burlington Electric, yep. But the conditions we put on the harvest cover all of it. It's not just that, well, you're only doing biomass here, so these conditions only apply there. It applies to the harvest. So in order to get approved, they've gotta meet the conditions if we come up with any.
That's why I've always thought we're a little bit like the tail that wags the dog, because
Right.
we're not the big portion necessarily economically of any particular harvest, and we're only accepting chips if there was another higher value purpose that somebody was already going for. But when you sell to us, you get this additional scrutiny, which is good,
Okay, so they wouldn't otherwise get the scrutiny.
not necessarily.
Not
That's what I was getting
necessarily.
at, okay.
Yep. Yep.
So it gives us a chance to have an impact on, you know, hundreds or thousands of acres every year that otherwise there would be no oversight. Unless somebody complains, which happens, but.
So private landowners have the right to do any sort of logging?
Basically.
Pretty much.
If they're in use value, they have to follow their plan. And there are state laws, acceptable management practices that they have to follow. So there are ways for a landowner to still get in trouble doing something if they're doing it on their own. There are laws.
Yeah.
But this goes far and above that.
Yep, thanks.
Yep.
I'll just offer that I was able to go on a tour with Don a year or so ago. And the perspective of the landowner was not of scrutiny and oversight, it was of benefit. And they felt like, I think they really relayed that they felt like they got a lot of benefit of having the foresters there and of understanding more about what was happening. And the logger seemed very positive about it because it created a market for this stuff that otherwise wouldn't be marketable. So it was, scrutiny sounds, scrutiny and oversight is true, but
It's
also,
help.
it's
I
help.
mean,
It's
we're
help,
there to
yeah.
help them
Yeah.
do it right.
Technical assistance.
And
Yeah.
most of the landowners, all of them who we work with are really, they appreciate that. And there are other landowners that don't want any oversight, and fine, we won't, they can do their own thing and we don't deal with them.
I wanna go into it.
I had a similar experience with Bill Cropland a bunch of years ago, and he took me out to several sites that were being cut. One that was getting clear cut, and another when they were using skid steers to surgically take trees. And afterwards, we were going along the highway, and he was showing me where they had cut years before and what had been. You couldn't tell. There was a slight change in color from one section to the next, but you really had no idea that they were even ever there. Just how well that worked. So I would encourage anyone who hasn't gone out with a forester to take a day and get out in the woods and check it out.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Awesome.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. That was really cool.
Thanks for being
Thanks
here.
for taking the time.
Thanks, Don.
Good to meet you
Thanks,
all.
Don.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to
Appreciate
meet
it.
you. Okay. Next, we'll have the Commissioner's Corner, a time for commissioners to make any comment or raise any questions. I did want to kick off our Commissioner's Corner with recognition of Commissioner Moody, and formally just appreciation and gratitude for all your service, and for 16 years. You've had incredible impact on the board, on staff, on the work, on customers in Burlington, and we just appreciate how you've served with heart and care, really digging into issues and really carrying a lot of all of the needs. So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. 16 years, I was just jotting down some of the things that have happened over the time. One of the first things was we took out lights on the belt line. I don't know how that was a thing, but it's one of the useless lights on the belt line I thought that was kind of neat. That one of the first things I had my hand in. But a lot of things have happened over 16 years. We went to smart grid from old system. We bought Winooski 1 at this time. We got into contracts with Georgia Mountain, Hancock, like all these wind and contracts. The electrification of the fleet, the general electrification of the city and stuff. Getting to net zero 2030. We've just been a part of a lot of really cool progressive things over the years. The electrification of this fleet, getting into some neighborhoods and finding problems in neighborhoods, and then working with the department so that the staff, when they go out and are proactive about working with neighborhoods when they start doing projects. So I've just seen a lot come and go over time. We've done a lot in the time here, and I want to call out CCTV, the company I used to work for. If it wasn't for Channel 17, I wouldn't be here, and if it wasn't for what they do in informing people about these meetings, I was doing that job. Started doing that here, and just loved and was fascinated by what BED does. And the general manager, Barb Grimes, at the time, encouraged me to switch sides, and I did, and I never looked back. So I'm absolutely grateful and humbled to have been a part of this, and I'm gonna miss a lot of faces here, but, it's you guys that here. You folks have a lot, all of you have such to give to this thing, and I really hope for the best for the board here. And all the folks at BED, there's some real unsung heroes, some people who fight viciously for this city, and people need to know about them, and I will always be screaming at the top of the mountaintops about the work that all you folks do, all the folks out in the field, to keep the lights on. We do a lot more than keeping the lights on. For the future here, I hope, there's a few things that I hope for the department. I hope we get to own McNeil and have full ownership of that and full ability to make decisions on its future, because there's a lot to be talked about that place, and what happens at its future. District heating, we've been talking about there. I saw it came up in my thing. 15 years we've been talking about that. Let's get that done. And then finally, I think the future is geothermal. I think we have a future of geothermal here. But I also think this is the department, this is the city in the United States that it has been, and I think will be one of the leaders in the future. We are going to be one of the cities, and for those folks out there, like Mr. Porter, who think down in this department, I know you folks are always looking for that next thing, that next answer, that next solution, that next bit of technology, and what's next for the future. And I have high hopes for this department, this commission, and the city of Burlington. And I just want to thank you all for 16 years. It's been a really fun run. It's been fascinating, and I've enjoyed being a part of this, and I'm just humbled to have had this wonderful experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other commissioners want to bring up anything? You can go.
All right. You brought up district energy, being the new person on the committee. Just had a question based on some of the comments that we've received as commissioners from the public, and having no discussion yet in my time here. I was just looking for comments from Darren on what going forward should we expect on district energy. What is going on or not going on? Sure.
There's really not much going on at the moment, which is why we haven't had any discussions on it recently. We've really been trying to focus in our efforts with McNeil on a couple things. One is battery storage, which I was going to mention, but I'll mention now, which is stay tuned. We are working very, very hard to try to finalize battery storage project for McNeil as part of our kind of broader effort to have innovation at the facility, building on the solar test center with UVM and the location of the indoor agriculture facility that we have with the nonprofit. We're thinking about battery storage as being the next step. We may even ask, depending on some timeframes, we may be in a position to bring you something in July on that topic. We may also ask that we adjust the July meeting date depending on some different things. So we might need to move it back a little bit or do something. We typically don't have an August meeting, but we were wondering if, depending on the time frame, if we can do it July 8th, we'd love to. That's the earliest date you can have a commission meeting, I think, given the second Wednesday of the month. So we're working very hard to see what we can do there. So battery storage, expect some conversation on that in the very near future. And then working off the Valerity report, looking at wood pyrolysis as a way to achieve some of the aims that we've had with district energy, which is, how can we be more efficient with the facility? How can we use the wood chips that we get in the most productive way possible? Wood pyrolysis is an alternative approach to doing that. District energy was a different approach. So I think that, there's probably more conversation we could have about that too, but those are the two things that we've really tried to focus in on over the last, I would say, year to 6 months, and we'll be bringing some items forward soon.
Okay, thank you. No, that's what I've seen so far, so.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. It doesn't actually need to be directly answered now. It could be a longer term thing, but I think just looking at the memorandum and knowing we should have a role in integrated resource planning is one driver for me to ask this question, but also because it feels like we're looking as a commission at sort of shorter term energy decisions, and seemingly challenges of renewable energy supply, along with McNeil performance and, you know, the potential that we keep hearing about for virtual power plants and electrifications, all of these things coming together. So one of the things that's top of mind for me is just figuring out when the commission can start to be brought into how you're seeing alternative resource planning. And I know there's some constraints about the IRP specifically, but I think that would help me feel more confident in weighing in on smaller decisions if I know your viewpoint on the bigger picture, because I don't exactly know that.
Yeah, so there is a role for the commission to play in the integrated resource plan, which we typically produce every 3 years. And it's not a decision document, but it's an analytical document that shows what's our framework for looking at different renewable options and why do we value certain things the way we do, all that kind of stuff. So typically, it's a lengthy process where we work with the Department of Public Service ahead of time. We work with the commission. There are multiple meetings where we have consultation with the commission. There's usually a public forum as well. And then we develop and submit a plan. The last time we did that was November of 2023. And then uniquely and atypically, there were 2 interveners, Pike Porter and Nick Bersampieri, who were granted limited intervention in that docket, which is typically a docket that would involve us and the Department of Public Service, and you would reach some sort of a conclusion in that much more quickly. That docket is still ongoing. We're literally working on responses to interrogatories, third set of interrogatories from the interveners now in, June of 2026. So we would have, on a normal schedule, been deep into the process of producing the next IRP, and you would have been in consultation with us about that. Due to the fact that we don't have an outcome on the prior one, we've had approval from the commission twice now to move back the date with the department's support, such that the next one is not scheduled to start in the very near future. We'd like to bring the litigation on the prior one to a conclusion, and then be able to work with everybody on a new one. So the answer is yes, you would be involved and will be involved in the development of the IRP. That's not necessarily a full framework or substitute for the idea that we will bring power contracts kind of forward on a needed basis, and we've got one obviously that we just talked about and that I've got in the packet here, which was more time sensitive. But I think what the IRP gives you is a sense of how we're comparing resources, and we have an IRP model, and when we bring forward a resource, we'll use that model to help evaluate it. So it's a good thing that you bring it up, because the commission should certainly know and understand it. If you haven't had a chance to look at the 23 IRP, it's available on our website, or we can send it around, and it's definitely worth a review. It's a little out of date now, unfortunately, but some of the concepts in there will not be dissimilar to concepts we might explore in the next one as well. We modeled, I think, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, we modeled a battery storage project in the 23 IRP, I believe. So that's a great example. Like we did an analytical exercise of how we would evaluate battery storage, and now we have real projects that we're actually scrutinizing using that IRP model to kind of help us evaluate and bring those forward.
I'm going to repeat this back to make sure I understand. So because of the docket, you're unable to share publicly into the commission details of an IRP because of the delay?
No, sorry. The IRP is public.
Well, I mean...
we just haven't been able to work on the next one and do the consultation.
Oh, so you can't even work on...
Well, we don't have the staff capacity to simultaneously litigate the prior one and work on the next one. Also, typically you get some sort of guidance from both the department and the commission in terms of how to go forward with the next one, and we don't have the benefit of that at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have not started work on the next one.
So, and I guess my question, my follow-up question is, when considering potential resources for power or battery storage or virtual power plants, all of those things, do you have a framework, a decision-making framework that may sit in an IRP but is something that is available to us to reference so we can understand how you're seeing kind of currently and long-term what these different how they weigh in your priority list and how you're looking at them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the IRP, if you read the 23 IRP, which again is public, it's not confidential at all, it's just it's being litigated for
Sure.
approval, but it's still very much a public document. If you look at it, you'll get a sense of how we would evaluate different resources and what benefits we kind of ascribe to different resources. So that may be helpful in thinking through, if we bring you a specific contract, you might look and say, okay, this makes sense based on that, or you might have a question based on it. And we did the sample analysis essentially that we did, the model analysis that we did for the 23 IRP was battery storage, because we anticipated that we might be able to have a project going forward. So that is our kind of framework, and that's our model for how we analyze power resources. It's also a very dynamic market. So
Right.
something we wrote back in 23 that was produced partly in 2022 is out of date now. And the only work really that we've been able to do, or that would pertain to the new IRP, is we have a forecast from Itron that we would use to start to build out that IRP, but we haven't been able to do that work yet because of the litigation. Yeah. So if we were in a normal situation, we would have already probably been talking to you about the 26 IRP. But that's delayed.
Okay. Anything else from the commissioners? Okay. General manager update?
Well, we'll roll right into kind of per our conversation, but we were really happy to have public announcement around the new hydropower resources. So we have, this is Skelton Hydro from Maine, which we discussed with the commission previously. We have a short-term agreement for 100% of the output for the remainder of this calendar year to help fill our need for this calendar year. And then we have a 5-year agreement that you all approved that now has been executed that starts on January 1 and is for 50% of the output from the facility. So, per our conversation, and Commissioner Moody, you mentioned Hancock Wind, that contract expires in October. And this will help fill some of that gap as well as some of the gap. We have one of the Relevate assets as well that we announced that we've got energy from. We were anticipating having potentially 3 assets from Relevate. So this new agreement covers the hydro that we weren't getting that we thought we might get with Relevate, and then covers as well a replacement of the Hancock Wind. So our portfolio will go towards being more hydro and a little bit less wind as a result of that, with different benefits and different pieces that go along with that. But we're really pleased to have that. It's a very tough market to procure renewable energy in, as Commissioner Kenny mentioned, and we're really glad to have that locked in and moving forward. Power is flowing. So that's good news. Wanted to give a brief update on the business process audit. So we had a kickoff meeting with DPS, with Commissioner Carrick Johnson and Jim Porter from DPS here on May 27th, along with ARC, who is the selected consultant and who we know a little bit from prior work. It has been an intensive process already. We've been doing many hours of conversations, interviews, providing documents, et cetera, to support the audit. It's been a productive and collegial exercise. We are going to conclude most of the anticipated staff interview process this week, and we anticipate having a draft report with recommendations by the middle of July, and a final report that will be presented to the PUC in early August, with potentially a presentation or some additional process in mid to late August from there. So that's kind of the latest on that. And we are very much looking forward to learning. In fact, there's already been some learning as we go. We've thought of a few ideas on things that come up during the conversation where we can do something to improve. So where we see those, we're not waiting, we're implementing. But we'll look forward to having the formal recommendations that they can offer us, and we'll bring those to the commission. We'll discuss them when we have them. So more to come on that. FY27 rate case was approved unanimously at City Council. I had in here we were going to file it by June 12th. But this is a little different process now that we're doing the under 3% rate case, which is potentially the non-litigated rate case. So we're working with the department on the timing. There's different notice and timing requirements for that. So we'll keep the commission updated. We're working as well with customer care and communications on a bill notice that'll go out to customers, letting them know about the rate change that's proposed. So staying on track with the 2.99%, but the timing might be a little different than we anticipated. Distinct from the IRP, the DRP is what we're deeply into at the moment, which is the 3-year efficiency budget, essentially. And we are working towards a filing date later this week for an update, what we were calling Plan B, which was based on the legislation that passed H940. So we're submitting a plan in consultation with the Department of Public Service and taking feedback from them that would cover our 3-year electric efficiency budget and 3-year TEPF budget. And the legislation spelled out that 60% of the TEPF funds would go towards thermal efficiency and weatherization initiatives, including income-eligible electric panel upgrades as part of that, and pre-weatherization work to help abate asbestos or roof leaks or knob and tube wiring, other things that are preventing weatherization. So we'll have a really robust program there in partnership, we hope and anticipate, with not just BGS and CVOEO, but maybe the State Office of Economic Opportunity as well. So we're going to work with partners to implement that. And then 40% of the funds available for what we're calling greenhouse gas emission reduction programs. So that's continued commercial sector custom programs, things like geothermal that come up, or electric transit buses. Our geothermal well testing program that has helped with drilling wells for the high school and other buildings around and led to some successful projects. That'll continue. And then transportation programs. So being able to continue with the boosted EV incentive that we announced last year and that would otherwise expire at the end of this year. We're hoping to continue that through this next 3-year period, knowing federal support has been eliminated and state rebates are also expired. As well as continuing support for multifamily rental property EV charging, and continuing support for our high mileage driver EV adoption program. So that's all going in with a lot of work from our team this week, and we'll keep the commission updated on the process from there. And then lastly, well, 2 last things actually. One that's not on here that I want to remember to mention is typically in July we bring you an updated proposed strategic direction. So the strategic direction is a 1-page document with a lot of stuff on it that really, the top portion is meant to be relatively stable. It's our mission and values, and the bottom portion is a set of initiatives that we're working on. And so I've asked our team, we try to do this as very much a bottom-up approach. We ask everybody in the organization to let us know if there are initiatives that they would propose adding, or if there are initiatives that need to be edited or removed because they're complete or out of date. So we'll bring you our sense of where things are, and then the commission can certainly ask us about certain aspects of that or suggest things. And then we try to have that presented and adopted typically at the July meeting. So I wanted to let you know that that was coming. For new commissioners, if you want to familiarize yourself, if you haven't had a chance, it's on our website with the strategic direction. If you have any questions in the interim, please let me know, and we'll work on gathering all the information to present something to you at the July meeting. And then actually lastly, so we have 2 important new hires joining us at BED that we're very pleased to announce on June 22nd. So Chris Burns has retired, and Dan Edson, currently with Efficiency Vermont, is going to be joining us. He's a Burlingtonian. We're very excited to have him. He'll be taking over as Manager of Energy Services, so you'll see him at the commission certainly once we get started. And then new position, the Principal Counsel and Compliance Officer position, which was one of the positions we created in response to some of the regulatory challenges we were seeing to add capacity and also to help replace our outside counsel position that we were moving away from. Jared Pellerin, who was previously with the City of Burlington, City Attorney's Office, so we know him from that. He's currently the Deputy City Attorney in South Burlington. He'll be coming back to Burlington and working with us in this position. And we're going to have both of them starting June 22nd, so very excited to share that. And that's everything I've got. Glad to answer questions.
I have a comment and a question. So the comment is regarding the strategic direction, and it's just a request to give us as much lead time as possible to
Yes.
review that in advance of the meeting, as always. My question is, we've been talking about the FERC order about the rebate from
Yes.
the transmission owners. Can you give us is there any update since last meeting?
I was actually at a Velco strategic retreat for the Velco board today. Lengthy discussions on that, and there's a lot still in process. So I don't know that I have any substantive updates from what we've discussed previously. I think there's still a lot of litigation or motions that are in place. There's the refund issue and how that is treated, and whether it stays where it is, and whether it gets treated by FERC for Velco and others as a regulatory asset is kind of a question. And then how it's funded by us is another question. There's the going forward change, which we've sort of incorporated into our budgets already, so that's the reduction in the rate of return for Velco equity. There's additional Velco equity that's being issued, so that will help, all things equal, provide some additional return on various projects that would be invested in. And then there is a motion at FERC by the transmission owners more broadly, this is not just a Vermont issue obviously, to raise the rate of return based on more current factors up to a level that's upwards of 11%. So that will be litigated at FERC as well and could affect our going forward kind of dividends from Velco. So there's a lot happening. There's a lot of focus, I know, at the Department of Public Service within regional advocacy around Vermont's unique situation within this litigation. So obviously the state officials and others are doing what they can to find pathways to help mitigate this. Velco is as well. So we'll keep you updated, but I don't have anything else kind of firm to share at this point. But big topic of conversation.
Thank you, Darren.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that
Thank you.
update. Okay, next we have financials.
Good evening. These are the budget versus actual results for April FY26. We had a budgeted net loss in April of $963,000. We had an actual net loss of $502,000, so that's a favorable variance versus budget of $461,000. Moving down from the top, sales to customers were worse than budget by $277,000. Other revenues, just about on target, only $92,000 better than budget. Power supply revenues were favorable to budget by $214,000. This was due to the timing of REC deliveries. April is not typically a month where we deliver RECs that we have sold. We have one particular contract where the deliveries were spread over several months, including April. So these were budgeted in a different period, but were received in April. Moving down to expense, net power supply expense was favorable to budget by $409,000, primarily made up of favorable variances in transmission and purchased power. The rest of other operating and maintenance expense was also favorable to budget by $455,000, most of that due to timing of outside services and maintenance contracts. Depreciation was a bit over budget at $65,000. And then moving down below the line to other income and deductions, there's a pretty large unfavorable variance there of $321,000. That's due to the timing of customer contributions to capital projects compared to what we had budgeted for. There's some grant income variation there as well, but most of it's customer contribution timing. And then interest expense a little bit over budget due to the 2026 revenue bond that we just issued. No questions, I'll move down to the second page. Capital spending, April year-to-date, was $7 million compared to the budgeted value through April of $13.8 million. It's 46% of the full year budget. I would hazard a guess that through the end of June, our actual capital spending will be around $9 or $10 million. April was the start of the McNeil outage, but most of the McNeil outage happened in May. So the production actuals will be increased pretty significantly after May closes. And the distribution actuals will continue to rise. Some of the yeah, that, the distribution projects are clustered in the warmer months. So warmer weather means more distribution projects are happening, so I expect that total to rise as well. Yes.
I have a question on the IT projects, because there was significant delay there.
Mhm.
Which ones are creating operating, or I guess reliability risks or cybersecurity risks or anything like that, or are they? And why are those delayed?
One of them is delayed just due to the timing of contract negotiations and getting to kickoff. That's the financial ERP, which we just signed the contract last month, and we have a kickoff meeting scheduled for next week. The other one is the CIS, customer portal, mobile work management, the SpryPoint implementation, and that's just progressing more slowly. The project's not over budget. It's just that the timeline is slipped. So we had budgeted to progress faster through those milestones than we have been. Those are the two major contributors
Okay.
to that variance. Yeah. And then April 30 cash was 14.8 million. That is $2.3 million better than where we had budgeted to be at this point in the year. And the credit rating factors, debt service coverage at 4.6, adjusted at 1.19, and 154 days cash on hand, including the line of credit. Happy to take any questions.
What's that? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Okay. Last on the agenda is the commissioners' check-in. Are there any things that the commissioners want to bring up that they've reflected on in this meeting? Anything else that's come to mind? Commissioner Kenny?
Yeah, I have a question about renewable energy supply, which is becoming seemingly more and more of a supply shortage. And my question is related to what can be done at a couple different levels, from a BED utility level, at a state level, or at advocacy level, to enable more renewable energy resource development in the state of Vermont?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think at a kind of a national, regional level, offshore wind was intended to bring a lot of supply, and it's been canceled in many cases. So that's a bigger challenge than just a Vermont challenge, but it'll impact on our region. And I note that the attorneys general of a number of New England states and New York recently sued the federal administration over exactly that issue, saying that our ratepayers could be harmed by the fact that the administration is canceling leases and paying back lease payments, directing companies to go, produce energy in other states of other forms as opposed to offshore energy. So for wind, so that's one issue for certain. Vermont does not do any new wood or hydro, essentially. There's just none.
Or wind, right? Isn't there a moratorium?
Well, there's effective moratorium on wind. So we did some new wind during the middle of the last decade, but there's no new wind coming on. We still build solar. It has limitations, but it's valuable in a lot of respects, but it has limitations in terms of how much it can produce as opposed to capacity. You have 500 megawatts of solar capacity in the state, but it's not necessarily producing 500 megawatts of energy at any given point. You might get a lot of production in the summertime and less so in the wintertime. And obviously battery storage can play a role in certain aspects. There's conversations around, supply from outside the region, like hydro from Canada. People have different views on that. There's always been, and there's long-standing conversations about how to get transmission capacity to bring hydro from Canada into the New England or New York regions. So there's some issues around that. But in terms of your question, which was, Vermont, I would say the current conversation that I'm hearing at the state level is more around nuclear, and whether to build new nuclear or small modular nuclear or different types of reactors. There's been some public discussion around that. There is no new wind proposed. There's certainly no new hydro, and when we go to relicense hydro, as we're doing right now, sometimes there are new requirements that are put in place that may limit the production. So you might, even the hydro you have might produce less due to requirements over time. And certainly we have wood in our portfolio, but other than McNeil and Rygate, those are the two wood chip plants. There's no new proposed plants outside of a 2.2 megawatt proposal in Lindenville, which is for wood pyrolysis, same technology that we've been looking at through the Valerity report. And so, yeah, your options are a little limited in terms of supply, but it's not just a Vermont problem, it's really a regional problem. And we have seen a couple of states have kind of rolled back some of their renewable energy and portfolio standards for affordability reasons. But all things equal, that sends a signal to the market that's not a signal for additional procurement. You could argue that it might be sending a good signal anyway, and you can't build because of the other constraints that I mentioned. So there's a balance to be had there. I will imagine that in Vermont, there's a study, I believe, that was proposed and passed in the legislature to look at whether our renewable energy standard, which we updated in 2024, whether we have adequate supply to meet that or not, and there may be efforts to roll that backwards and/or allow nuclear or other resources to comply with the renewable energy standard, which it currently doesn't. So there's a lot of factors at play, and I would say that at the regional level really is where a lot of the conversation is, but Vermont certainly could do more theoretically with allowing for wind projects to go forward or different things like that that might have an impact, but that's not currently the situation. Yeah.
So if there was wind development and/or solar with battery storage, would that be something that would be of interest to the renewable energy portfolio of a utility like BED?
If there was a wind project in Vermont, and out of the few that are commercial, one is owned by Green Mountain Power, and I think there's another in the southern part of the state, Searsburg, that Green Mountain Power gets power from. Of the other two, we get power from both of them, Sheffield and Georgia. So we have a pretty good track record of saying, hey, if somebody's looking at building wind in Vermont and it can be cost efficient, we're definitely interested. I think that would remain the case. Solar in Burlington, we have always said yes to, we love. Solar outside of Burlington has been challenging from an economic standpoint because the transmission or wheeling costs that you have to pay to get it tends to out kind of value it unless you're at a really big scale that we don't tend to reach very often in New England. So solar in Burlington, battery storage in Burlington, yes, and we're going to be advancing battery storage soon. Wind in Vermont, we would absolutely be interested in if there was a project to look at.
And there's currently a moratorium on wind development.
It's
throughout
not
the state?
it's not a literal moratorium.
Oh.
What it is I think the state leadership has said they're not interested in additional wind at various levels, and then there is on the books what I understand is kind of the most restrictive sound standard in the country, perhaps, which would limit your ability to put wind in a lot of areas, because if you had any kind of noise impact, you potentially would violate this standard. So I think if your question was like, how would we develop wind, and assuming there was a change in desire from kind of state leadership on that, the first thing that probably would have to be looked at is whether the standards that were adopted in 2016, 2017 timeframe are reasonable and adequate. Obviously, we have to be protective of various public concerns when you're building generation. And anyone who's gone up and I've been to Georgia Mountain, I've been to various wind projects. If you stand near a wind project, there is some noise. Obviously, it can create a shadow depending on where you are on the mountain. So there's different impacts there. There's also, you want to make sure you're taking into account wildlife impacts and other things, stormwater impacts when you're developing. But that said, we've done wind in Vermont. We have some good projects. We have some good ways to do it. There's probably ways to improve the process from where it was. And there's probably ways to even look at some of the existing sites and whether you could add power there in an efficient way. Searsburg, I think, was repowered. It was originally a smaller and older facility, and it was repowered in the middle of the last decade, I believe, to be upgraded. So we have some sites now that are 10-plus years, and, you could question, could you add some generation there? So there's a variety of balancing factors, and it's certainly not an easy conversation to have, but those are kind of the parameters that I think somebody would look at if they were looking at that issue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts from commissioners?
Thanks for a great 16-year run. Appreciate it.
Don't be a stranger.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Public comment, we'll be
Yeah.
waiting for you.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Any discussion on the movement to adjourn? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All ayes, no, nobody are opposing. We are adjourned. Thank you.